Well, thank you for joining us. Christine, you choose a career that's not an everyday career that one of us typically would choose. How did it come all about? I mean, what made you choose that career?
Yeah, my mom every day, she's like, why didn't you choose tennis? You know, it would be so much easier. Yeah, it's a long story. I don't know if you guys have time, but it was a funny one also because in my family, really, no one liked cars or followed racing. So it just, I don't know, since I was very, very little, I had like posters everywhere, you know, and I was like super in love, and everyone would come in the house and be like, oh, you have a son, and my mom like, yes, Cristino. So I always tell this story because it like explains perfectly, you know, the situation. And pretty much it just happened. I was 17 years old, living in Fuerteventura, so I was like basically working in a bar and in an ice cream shop, and you know, I just loved cars. We didn't know why. And one day I see this Toyota Corolla like racing down my house, and I was like, ooh, what's that? And I heard it, and you know, I was just so excited. I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait here and see if the car comes back. And after 2 hours, the car did. So I was like, oh my God, what is this? You know, I didn't understand. So basically, I decided to go out every day at the same time to see if the car would come out. And it did. After 1 week of waiting, the car came back. So me and my very intelligent self of 17 years old, so kids don't do that, please. I ran in the middle of the street, and I was just like, eventually it's going to stop. And the car stopped, and the driver was like, what are you doing in the middle of the street? Are you crazy? And I was like, sorry, can I get in the car? And you know, that moment for me was like change of my life. I sat in the car, I didn't know what it was. There were like bars and smell of gasoline and you know, the sound, and I was like, okay, what's this? And he just like, first gear, ba, ba, second gear, and then starts drifting off, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is, but this is my life.
So you were sold on it from day one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then story goes on because, of course, you know, my mom that, you know, and you're not going to tell that your only single child is going to become a race car driver. And so I was like, I'm going volleyball. And then eventually she discovered me, and I was prepping my own race car. So
yeah. So what happened then? I mean, you're also an engineer, a motorsports engineer. What happened in between starting racing and then making the decision to study engineering, motorsport engineering?
Yeah, it wasn't really a decision because, so I started, obviously I really wanted to become a race car driver, but everyone was telling me, it's really expensive, you're not rich, where are you going? So I was like, there has to be a way, you know? So I thought, if I build my own race car, maybe I can race, you know, because it's cheaper. So basically I started like learning to weld and, you know, like a little bit of mechanics. I bought like all the books of Amazon that I could find, like super crazy. And I just got a little bit of terrain, and I bought a chassis in a scrapyard of a Golf MK2. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start from here. And pretty much it just went on until I built the car after 1 year and a half. So I started racing. And then I was kind of obligated, you know, typical parents that they want you to study, and my parents were very like business driven. So I kind of went to England to study business management, and then I found my way into motorsport engineering.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and how much knowledge did you get about electric vehicles during your studies? Was that part of the studies back then already?
Actually, not really, not at all. I mean, at that time, you know, also when I started racing, there were almost no girls. So I remember getting in the championship and everyone like, where's the driver? You know, and I was like, it's me, you know, super happy. So yeah, it was like EVs, I think, was totally not a thing at that time. Yeah. So also when I went back to Canary Islands, I opened my own mechanic workshop, and you know, almost never saw an electric vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you first started racing with ICE cars, so fuel.
Yeah, my first car was after the Golf. Obviously, I sold it and I bought a chassis of a Corolla, like the first car I saw because I was so in love. And yeah, obviously, petrol head, like 100%. You know, I didn't even know what it was. And then 2 years ago, was it? I started working with Porsche as driver instructor. And my boss was telling me that, you know, there was this Taycan S coming out, and we were talking about, you know, how we could show the people how this car, because there was a little bit of unknown, and people still like, we don't want to buy an electric because it's complicated to charge, So we created this electro tour, and we did a tour all over Spain and Portugal, and we stopped in every city, and every kilometer we would do, we would get a kilo of food for charity. So it was like a charity event, but at the same time we were like trying to show people that you can do it with EVs, and we did the whole Spain and Portugal in like 11 days or something. So that was my first contact with EVs.
But you still kept racing the ICE cars at the moment?
Yes, yeah, completely. Okay. And I was still into my combustion engines totally. And then, one day I started seeing, so this was like my first touch with electric. And meanwhile, I was learning more and more. I kind of saw on one side Extreme E. So Extreme E, it's completely different championship from what I normally race. It's fully electric, and it's like based on 3 pillars, which is like electrification, of course, sustainability, and equality. So I saw this championship, and I was like, that's amazing, I want to be there. And of course, I started learning more about the electric vehicle. So I'm like, okay, so we can actually race with electric cars, and at the same time, like, because we say it's racing with no trace, because we supposedly race, and then we leave this remote place where we're racing, and we leave it better than how we found it. So it's pretty amazing, because obviously when I saw it at the beginning, I thought it was not possible. And then when you're actually there and you're racing against, with these amazing drivers, with these incredible cars, because the cars like 550 horsepower, they're like electrical SUVs, like prototypes kind of thing, like Dakar style. So it's incredible, and when you're in the car sitting, and I started driving, and I was like, okay, this is a new world,
I mean, how did it go about? What was the first impression that you had when you switched from a combustion engine to an electric vehicle? Did you go, well, obviously you had some training because electric vehicles behave differently. You have to treat them differently when you accelerate and everything. But what was the major click moment for you that you switched to electric racing?
So I think, the first moment, obviously, me that I'm super petrol head, it was very like, not sure. But, and also, like I said before, the sound and the smell, everything is missing, But you get so many other things, when you drive, like the sensibility of the cars is like another world. And obviously with Extreme E, all the cars are the same. So we are all driving the same vehicle. And in this case, I kind of understood, oh my God, electric cars are really on the same level of combustion engines. And I never thought it could be possible, And of course, engineering-wise, there's a lot of work behind it, and a lot of things that, like, for example, the braking system, the regen, and the hyperdrive, like we talked about before. So there's a lot of things that you don't get in the combustion engine that I think it's pretty amazing. And also, I mean, for example, the hyperdrive, you could get it in the combustion engine, but it's very complicated to get. You have to over-dimension the engine, and, pressure of turbo and all this. This is a lot of work, and maybe it's not that reliable also. While in electric engine, it's just a software. So it's like, oh, you want to have full speed for 4 seconds? Sure, Christine, there you go. And I'm like, okay, maybe I like this,
So what key learnings did you have when you raced on different grounds? Because I think that's also a big difference. So, snow, ice, gravel, tarmac.
Yeah, so actually a really funny thing is last year I raced the Andorran Ice Championship. So it's like pretty cool. Like you have MotoGP drivers, like world champions coming to the race. It's like a little bit of pre-season racing championship, and it's super amazing. And last year it was they're called giant cars, which is basically a bike engine, 750 Hayabusa, and fully fiber. So it's like a motorbike on a car, So I was like, oh, this is cool. And this year they actually changed to this QEV RX2E vehicles, which are pretty cool because I raced in the rallycross this year. And so we're all going electric. So of course there's this movement happening, And I thought, I'm not sure if the sensations are going to be the same. And then actually, if you think about it, and as soon as you drive it, you realize that the drivability is so much better. Like it's incredible, because it's like basically what happens on the tires is directly proportional to what's happening on your foot, So if you're flat out, you're just flat out instantly. So it's like on off, the acceleration, the feeling, and everything. It's insane, and it's so linear, and you can modulate it with your foot and with the sensibility that in a internal combustion engine is not possible, because of course if you accelerate full gas, it's going to be, the RPMs are going to go up, so it's a curve. So you can't get that in obviously combustion engine, but
yeah. And when you're racing on different grounds, and you just said that the car behaves kind of very predictable, I would say. What key learnings do you have in terms of the components that you have in an electric car? I mean, you have the powertrain, you have the battery, you just mentioned the brakes. Do they recuperate the brake engine energy?
Yeah. So we have, okay, obviously, like we said before, basically with the electric car, it's a system, right? So everything is a software, you have different buttons, and it's super easy, super direct. So it's almost like, I don't know, like a cartoon, being in those cars. And yeah, so the system, for example, the regen efficiency system, it's insane. Like, I don't know, we can take an example of Formula E nowadays. If you go full efficient with a Tesla Model S, for example, it's around about 10-15% of efficiency. While in a Formula E car, if you're racing in one lap, you get 40% efficiency. So basically 60% is on the driver. So it's like really amazing to see, the difference of how this happens into motorsports and like how you can put it then into road cars. Obviously, I think it's a little bit complicated to get in a road car because the driving style is different from a race. You're braking super hard, so of course the regen it's completely different numbers. But also powertrain. I mean, I don't know. We can talk about the brake system that you said. Also the brake bias and everything. On electric vehicles, you can get the brake-by-wire, which is also a system that QEV implemented that I think that you're talking to later. and it's an insane system, because it's all by software. So you can get, for example, the right tire braking on a curve and the left one not. So it's like, wow, but we can't get that into road cars. I mean, we could get it, but it would be very, very different. So like we said, I think on different surfaces, it's a huge development, because you drive it and everything is by sensitive. So
yeah, is it predictable? I mean, also if you have snow or if you have ice, that's not always the same ground. So when there's different types of ice, different types of snow, can you transform the experience from one to the other? Is it that predictable in an electric vehicle?
Yes, you could have it, or also the fact that you can put more traction, less traction. There's so many different models that you can do on an electric that on normal combustion engines you can't. So it's incredible. And also the fact that, for example, like we said before, the hyperdrive, right? Imagine in a combustion system we could put hyperboost the turbo or whatever and put it on the top level that you can get the hyperdrive, but then you would have a lot of other problems, like for example spare parts, parts on the car that would fail. Meanwhile, in an electric you can calculate it perfectly that you don't have other problems later.
Okay, and I assume there's a huge team when you race that is taking care of the car, of the single parts. I mean, I know the Formula One where you have one person per one part, but how is it in Extreme E, and how do you work together with the team? Let's say for the first day preparation and the first round that you drive, and then actually during the race. Can you take us through the preparation and the actual race? How you work with them technically? Okay,
so Extreme E is very different because, like I said before, as it's a championship based on sustainability and trying to carbon trace and all this, then we don't really have public. So we are also limited with personnel in teams. So each team only have 7 people. Like for example, in a Formula One you could have like 20. So 7 is a really, really limited amount, and we have maybe 3 engineers, and then the rest are mechanics. And then some engineers work on media too, so it's really cool because it's very multitasking. And I mean, it's amazing how they work, because it's like a Formula One team into off-road. For us that we race off-road, we're used to having cars jumping all over the place and arriving, come on, put the gas and let's go, And now everything is like computer, you come back with the car it's cooling down. Meanwhile, it's cooling down, they're charging it, and it takes 30 minutes to charge fully again, and then we're back at the back, and and all the engineers checking all the data with the onboard, of the track that you've just done onboard, with the onboard of your teammate, the differences, every mini sector of what we do, it's on details. So it's really incredible to see how they work and how everything has changed also, because it's so professional, And like we said before, there's most of the world champions are racing there, so of course you have to be professional, right? But it's really a big change to how it was before.
Can I imagine that, while you're doing a lap and testing out the grounds and how the car behaves and everything, the engineers work with the data that the car generates, but you also tell them, you know, you would like to have this tweaked or this tweaked, and then they kind of change the software, or how does it work?
Yeah, basically, so we come back with a feedback. So we're like, okay, I feel like the car is understeering or oversteering or whatever, and then like a little bit, oh, maybe I would like it a bit softer at the back. So you give them this feedback, and then they would take the onboard and they would check the feedback that you've gave, and after that they would look at the data on the computer, and they would see, the car is rebounding here, so maybe are you sure that you want it softer? Maybe you should like stiffen here. So it's very cool because it's like work together, you know, and also it's beautiful for us because we understand and we kind of help each other, and it's super amazing. But it's really cool because also most of the engineers are from track racing, and we come from off-road, so it's like two different worlds, you know. And it was funny because the first time I met them, they were like, this is so dirty here, you know, and I'm like, yeah, off-road, and they're like, suspicious, you know. So it's really cool how we can do this, and also we have all the software engineers of the shocks, so they're always there with us. So you know, you can check everything. It's pretty insane, like how it's built.
Yeah. So, how many rounds of, I wouldn't say trial and error you have, but before you do the actual race?
Okay, we have like 2 free practices, and then we have the semifinals, and then it goes on to crazy race, because the crazy race is like basically the last 4 or 5 drivers teams that are kind of out. They do like a shootout race, and then we take the first team, just the winner team, that goes back into the final, because then the final is 5 cars. So it's pretty crazy because there's a lot of like contact. So it's off-road mixed with rallycross mixed with track racing. You know, it's super crazy, but it's very, very exciting. You should come to a race.
Yeah, definitely. So you just said for racing and extreme racing, the impact that the driver has is about 40%. Is it correct? What kind of learnings do you think could you transform from rally driving into on-road vehicles? You know, like the automotive industry. What could be key learnings that they could take over into regular road vehicles?
I mean, I feel that for sure, since always, you know, road cars manufacturers have been studying, you know, the racing side of cars. And like we said before, like for example, the braking factor, that, you know, on a race car it's 40% each lap. Meanwhile, on a normal car, it's between 10-15% efficiency, which is like, wow, amazing, you know. So I think there's a lot that they can take from, but also there's a lot that it's really hard to put together, you know. But for sure, I think that most of the manufacturers, what they do is study the racing until they can, and then put it into road. But
so is there a lot of interest from the regular car companies into results and data that you generate during electric racing?
Yeah, and actually, like I was saying before, the fact that you know, electric engines and internal combustion engines have the same age, but really age as in they're the same old, no? But at the same time, it's just now when we have the necessity to develop it, and it's also because now we have so many manufacturers like fighting each other, so they kind of have to find the best efficiency and, you know, the best powertrain. So it's like, it's really cool that now it's the moment that everything is moving forward and they're actually finding.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, one last question: would you think it makes sense to include electric vehicle technology in motorsports studies?
Sorry?
To include more information in the studies, like university, you know, when
for
people...
sure.
Yeah?
No, for sure. Like I said before, when I was studying, we had nothing. And now I think that the world is basically all electric already. We've seen so many startups that you were showing me also. So, and I feel that they have to. But I think that they are going towards this already. And hydrogen also.
Okay, well, maybe we see you in a second career as a teacher.
Oh, God, no.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.